Hey everybody, it's Monday. It's time for a new episode of LonsTV. If you're not watching This Week in Movies, the show that I host on Sunday nights, and then goes up on iTunes and YouTube and everywhere else the next day, you really should, and I would appreciate it. We're sort of messing around with the formula recently. We've been doing it for 27 weeks now, so we're trying to sort of reinvent the show a little bit. What we're going to start doing is making it a little bit more review-focused in the coming weeks. It's a little, maybe tip of the hat to LonsTV. So it's going to be a little bit tighter and leaner, less focused on news, and you know, we'll still do interviews when we can get great people to come in, but it won't be tied to having interviews every week. It's going to be much more about, you know, Farrell, Roth, my co-host, and I, seeing a bunch of films each week, watching a bunch of stuff on Netflix each week, and just making recommendations so people can sort of have a good takeaway from the show. So if you haven't been watching it, now is a great time to start, because we're going to kind of start fresh with a new format, and you know, I really would appreciate it if you guys would check it out. It's on Sunday nights, but then it goes up. You can go to ThisWeekIn.com, you know, to see it afterwards, and you can go to, you know, it's on YouTube, you can search for it, it's on iTunes, you can search for it too, and actually this week's episode that we shot last night just went up. It's got Marshall Lewy, who did the film Blue State a couple years back, which was a sort of an indie hit, and then we do reviews of No Strings Attached and The Company Men, and then I offer some Netflix suggestions as well, and it's all stuff that I don't talk about here on LonsTV. Like, I purposefully do different stuff so that, you know, it's not repeating, so I'm not asking people to watch a bunch of videos with me repeating myself about the same films. So if you watch this and you watch that, all new stuff, it's almost more of me than anyone should be forced to sit through. But I'm asking you because you're my audience. Sad for you. Okay, so let's move on. The thing I wanted to review this week is Deep Cover. I'll tell you a little bit of the backstory. I made not long ago, because now I'm working from home, and so I'm doing a lot more work on my home computer and just like putting on music all day and, you know, writing or whatever else I'm doing for these various companies. So I'm listening to more just like playlists, and I would notice that I would listen to a couple, you know, an album or two albums in a row, and there would always be like the inevitable songs I didn't like, or I just put it on shuffle and stuff would come up I didn't want to hear, and I would have to constantly go back and forth to iTunes and flip around, and it was getting annoying. So I started making playlists, and I was making a like my favorite hip-hop songs of the 90s playlist, and I actually had Deep Cover, the song Deep Cover, in my iTunes randomly. I'm not sure when I got that, but I had it. So I moved that over there, and then as I was listening to it, I realized, like, not only am I not listening to this song in forever, but I haven't seen that movie since probably when it came out. It came out in 1992, and I don't believe I had seen it since around then. I don't think I saw it in theaters, so I probably saw it in, like, 93 or 94 on video. And haven't seen it since. So I rented it. It's not on Netflix streaming, which is a real shame, because it's one of those movies that would be perfect for Netflix streaming, that people would be like, oh, Deep Cover, and then they would watch it immediately, but would never think to like look it up and rent it. But I thought to look it up and rented it and got the disc in. And you know, I was sort of interested. One, it totally holds up. Like, it's still very watchable. It's still a lot of fun. But some things about it surprised me. The main one being, you know, not the main one. We'll get into that. But mainly, like, it's a very straightforward sort of undercover cop story. I think in the ensuing years since I first saw it, I've seen a lot of other movies with this setup, and so it seemed somehow less fresh than when I first saw it. I mean, if you've seen even Departed, it touches on a lot of the same themes. Laurence Fishburne plays a cop from Cincinnati, Russell Stevens, and the DEA recruits him. He saw his father shot to death in front of him when he was like 10 years old, and so now he's like just kind of a cold, distant guy, and according to the DEA, he thinks like a criminal. And the guy playing the DEA agent who recruits him is the little, like, Charles Martin Smith, I think is his name. He's this little kind of weaselly guy, and he was in a shitload of like 80s and 90s like badass action movies, despite looking like, you know, a little weenie. Most notably in The Untouchables, he's the Treasury agent who gets murdered in the elevator. But anyway, I don't know, is that a spoiler? Can you spoil the Elliot Ness movies? I think it's been long enough. Anyway, so he recruits Laurence Fishburne to go to LA and basically just become a drug dealer. Like, not even pose, just like literally live the life as if he was a drug dealer and try to work his way into like the Latin gangs in the area that control all the cocaine coming in to Los Angeles. So he goes out there and he's sort of moving slowly up the ladder, and he encounters David Jason, who's a crooked attorney by day, and he's midnighting as a drug trafficker, and he's played by Jeff Goldblum, and it's a pretty great performance. And the interesting thing about this performance and this character is the most interesting thing about the movie. Like, Laurence Fishburne's the protagonist, and that's like the A story, is the undercover cop story, but there's this thing with the movie where you always want to see more with the Goldblum character, and it actually is a really fascinating precursor to Breaking Bad. It's almost the same plot. He's like this lawyer, and he's got a wife and a daughter, and he's like this good family man. Well, not good family man. There's a scene with him with his family, and he has a temper, so he's obviously like not a normal like dad family man guy, but he's like trying to keep up this normal respectable life and then also sell cocaine by night. And he has this really elaborate, which now his plan in the movie is he wants to raise enough money selling coke, and then he's got this designer drug that a chemist friend of his has made in a lab, and they want to get $5 million together so they can produce this synthetic drug, and like that plotline seems really dated today. And in fact, there's conversations like, you know about all these new designer drugs on the street like the ecstasy, and it's like, holy shit, this was a long time ago. But anyway, so that part's all kind of silly, but it's a fascinating sort of character that he would want to have this double life, and that he's spending his days in like court and doing these sort of semi-respectable things, and then at night he's just literally like in shootouts and trying to be like an enforcer and steal other guys' territory, and he's hanging out with, these insane maniacal junkies and everything. And it's really interesting, and Breaking Bad touches on, like, thematically a lot of the same stuff as this movie, where it's about these two guys, and one of them is sort of book smart, and the other is sort of street smart, and they're working together to try to, like, break into the drug game, but they don't really know what they're doing, and that really makes up a lot of the plot of this movie. I don't know if the creators and the writers of Breaking Bad have ever, like, made that connection, but I was making the connection while I was watching it. Anyway, the film itself is really sort of genre filmmaking like you'd expect, but it's elevated by these two performances of Fishburne and Goldblum, who are a lot of fun. And it's fun to watch as sort of an early 90s time capsule, because the fashion and all the music, not just the really famous, like, the song with Dr. Dre and Snoop, if you can't, immediately think of it, is the one like, you don't stop because it's 187 on an undercover cop, and it's that one. And all the songs are like of that moment in hip-hop, and all of the fashions, especially where it's like crazy, like wild colors and primary colors and, weird head wraps and everything. Like, it definitely brings back immediately like that era in sort of style and hip-hop, urban style, whatever you call it. I feel like I'm being offensive right now, and I'm totally not. I'm just describing that style, but you guys know what I mean. Anyway, it also reminded me a bit, just to finish up, the Goldblum character of Sean Penn in Carlito's Way, where it's this, like, crazed, maniacal, coked-up lawyer. Of course, Sean Penn sort of kills it in a way that Goldblum does not quite. But it's still a fun movie if you're eager for a early 90s thriller randomly. I recommend it. Too bad it's not on streaming. It would be great to just tell you can go watch it like right now on streaming. And it was directed by Bill Duke, who is a well-known character actor who's been in Payback and tons of other movies. So anyway, that is LonsTV for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for watching this show, for watching the movie show, for subscribing to anything. I mean, anything you do, I really appreciate it. Checking out my stuff. It feels good. I like it. So thanks everybody. Thanks for watching the show, and I will see you all tomorrow.